Hi, good evening, everybody. And I'm so happy that you have joined us tonight for the do's and don'ts of divorcing a narcissist. If we had seats for this Facebook Live, and gladly we don't, because everybody who wants to know something about this can join, but we've got a great number of people registered for this. So we're so excited. So let me start off by introducing myself. I'm Debra Whitson. I'm an attorney, mediator, a collaborative lawyer, and author of Divorce Like a Pro, A Better Way to Break Up. My law firm is in Elizabethtown, New York, and my mediation company, Mediated Online Solutions, mediates family disputes and family issues anywhere around the world that people want to access our virtual mediation services. And I'm really thrilled tonight to have two amazing, but sort of like differently oriented professionals to give us three different perspectives on the do's and don'ts when you're going through a divorce. And I'm going to include separating or having a custody issue with somebody who is a narcissist. And just because I'm a lawyer, my legal disclaimer is narcissistic personality disorder is a DSM diagnosis that can only be made by a professional qualified to render that diagnosis. But we're talking tonight more about people who exhibit behaviors and traits that are typical of people who have narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic mental health issues. But we are not diagnosing anybody, and we're not saying that your partner or spouse needs to be diagnosed, because we know that there are a lot of undiagnosed people out there that exhibit these challenging traits and make separating and divorcing from them and co-parenting with them really challenging. So that's what we're here to address. We've got a bunch of questions that have been submitted by our attendees tonight in advance, so we'll be addressing that. So let me dive right in, and I'm going to first start with introductions of those joining me on the panel tonight. So with me, raise your hand, Liz. Liz Becker is the president and founder of the National Association of Divorce Professionals, and she's the senior trainer of the Certified Divorce Specialist, also known as CDS program. Liz is also a licensed neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner. That's a mouthful, talking about neuro-linguistics. She's a communication skills coach and trainer, and has more than a decade experience in working with both divorcing clients and the professionals who serve them. Having worked in the divorce industry for many years, she has a keen sense in detecting specific issues that create obstacles for all the parties involved in the process, including both the families and the professionals. Whether she was conducting neuro-linguistic programming certification trainings, co-parenting workshops, coaching divorcing clients, or speaking at conferences, Liz has always found great reward in educating people on how to effectively communicate and achieve positive change in their lives, both personally and professionally. Her passion and commitment to improving the ways families experience divorce is unwavering and will always remain a priority to her. And just so you all know, my connection to Liz is that I'm a member of the National Association of Divorce Professionals, and I've taken the Certified Divorce Specialist training program with Liz as my instructor. And I've got to tell you, it was invaluable for my practice working with divorcing clients and separating co-parents. So thank you, Liz, for taking time out to join us tonight. I can't wait to hear your insights on some of the questions that have been submitted.
Thank you, Debra. My pleasure.
You're welcome. Also with us, raise your hand, Susan, is Dr. Susan Korb Bernstein, and she's the owner of Divorce Coach Plus and is an experienced certified divorce coach and a certified high conflict divorce coach, which is very apropos of tonight's topic. She's earned her bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in education, leadership, and child development, and was a school teacher, an administrator, and a college professor before entering the divorce world. And I can't imagine how that whole thing changed your focus on the world. Her background helps her clients immensely in custody battles and parenting plans, including her specialty of divorce with families that have special needs children or a child. Susan also teaches the graduate mastermind course for divorce coaches and is an instructor in TINA, Swithin's high conflict divorce certification program. She speaks at numerous local and national events and guest podcasts for national and international group. She is known as the coach that other coaches and attorneys hire to get them through their own complex divorces. And I would definitely hire Susan if I was in that situation. Susan, thanks so much for being with us tonight. I am so honored that you're with us with Liz.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Okay, so in the theme of our program, the do's and don'ts of divorcing, I'd like to start with you, Liz, and I would ask if you could just explain, take a moment to tell the audience about what is the National Association of Divorce Professionals? Why does that matter if you're not a professional who's going through a divorce from a narcissist? And if you are, why does that matter even more? Tell us about the Certified Divorce Specialist program. And then, what should our audience be looking for when they're looking to engage professionals to guide them through this process of separating or divorcing from a person with narcissistic traits or tendencies? And tell us the don'ts of divorcing a narcissistic person. So that's a lot to ask, but I'm going to give you the platform now, and I'm sure you're going to run with it.
Yeah, definitely a lot to start off with the don'ts, right? Stop, just don't do it. Whatever these are the things you don't do. But first of all, thanks for having me here, Debra. As you mentioned, you went through training, you're part of the NADP, and I love that because we are so lucky to have professionals like you and Susan as well, both NADP members and CDS graduates. So thank you for having me. And I wanted to sort of start off for your viewers who are watching. There's probably a combination of those that are going through divorce, contemplating divorce, or maybe they're professionals that serve clients going through divorce, because like you mentioned at the beginning, the word narcissist, I think I tend to I try to stop myself from using that word just because I probably hear it about 10 times a day. And I think at some point, absolutely everybody is divorcing a narcissist. So I think that in order to be able to get the most out of this presentation, people should sort of listen to what we're all saying, and Susan as well, take it with a grain of salt and understand that your behaviors are going to be unique to yourself anyhow. The way that you communicate is going to be unique to yourself. So it's really important to have this expertise involved in giving you some pointers. And that's exactly why we came out with the NADP. As you mentioned in my bio, for years I coached myself. I taught communication skills. I went through divorce myself many, many years ago, and then got into coaching. And then I realized pretty quickly on that one of the biggest problems all of my clients were having is none of the professionals were communicating with each other. And so when you have the issue that you feel you are divorcing someone or dealing with someone that is high conflict, that is displaying narcissistic behaviors, right? What do we define that as? Like selfish, right? I think that's the closest thing that you could just compare to. Anybody that is divorcing someone that's selfish and thinking about themselves first, they're going to label them as narcissists, but that's very common, right? It's common through divorce. So what happens is if you yourself don't know how to communicate with them, which clearly you don't, that's why you're going through divorce, because if you did know, you would have a happy marriage probably. And on top of that, all of these professionals that are helping you are not communicating with each other and not guiding you properly in that aspect, then you have a recipe for a disaster. And I thought, okay, if you can't change the way someone is going to treat you, if you can't change laws, if the professionals can't change laws, the only thing that we can do is educate and bring everybody together, from not just those divorce professionals that everybody thinks they need, right? Not just the attorney, not just the mental health, but everybody else that's involved in the process. And that's why we created the NADP and launched that, which is an awesome organization where you know that the professionals that are part of the NADP are learning every month how to better serve their divorcing clients. They're actually listening to lectures every month on the specifics. So that's the starting of the NADP. And then after a couple of years of being with the NADP or launching it and having chapters across the country, I missed my part in the communication skills aspect, because to me, that's fundamental. And I'm sure you're going to hear some amazing advice from Debra and Susan today, which will help you in how you communicate with your divorcing spouse, because that communication is never going to end. Just because you get divorced, it actually is when it, I think, probably begins more so. You're going to probably communicate more with your future ex than you do while you were married, especially if there are children involved. So it's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it that's going to matter. And I noticed that a lot of my members were still struggling, no matter how long they've been practicing for. They were still struggling to communicate effectively with the many of your viewers, with those that are going through divorce. And that's, I think that was always the struggle, right? The struggle for both parts. If I were to look at it objectively, and I see a client who is divorcing, someone that is perceived as narcissistic behaviors and really struggling with the communication. And then I see the professional that's trying to give advice to the client, even, if they are prepared for it, but that client is not listening, then nothing gets done. Nothing moves forward. And that's why I created the Certified Divorce Specialist training, because in addition to having the basic understanding and little nuggets of information from professions outside your own specific expertise, which benefits professionals, it's being able to understand, to communicate it properly, to help the clients go through it, to help them navigate dealing with, is what you're going to talk about today, navigate dealing with the divorcing, with a high conflict spouse. So, all of that leads, and that's why, I love teaching the CDS, because in general, anyhow, it just teaches great communication skills, no matter what. And 50% of my students, even though they're professionals, have gone through divorce themselves. So they could use those skills right in their own personal lives. So I think that this leads to, and I can sort of start off a little bit with it, about the don'ts, and then maybe let Susan go with the do's, and you, Debra, and then chime in after. But one of the things that I would highly recommend for any listeners that are divorcing someone is to actually not think about that other person as a narcissist, because that's what's limiting them from the get-go. From the get-go, labeling someone based on their behavior of what they are gives you very little room to change the way that you're communicating with them, because you are going to be filtering every bit of their behavior and sort of anticipating it. It's like you're searching. Our minds at a subconscious level are continuously trying to affirm the beliefs that you already have. So it is going to be impossible to improve it. And at the end of the day, the main control that everybody here has is what's in their household with their children, not what's happening with the other person. So I don't want to jump the gun or anything, and I'm sure we can talk more about this later on after you guys focus on the do's. But my biggest advice would be to start off with that in the reference to communicating. Challenge yourself to actually find the qualities that were good in that ex-partner of yours before you got married. And focus on those rather than the aspect of them being a narcissist or behaving like a narcissist. And I know that may sound difficult to do because of the fact that you're still dealing with this high conflict situation. You're dealing with all the things that we will discuss today about that behavior that is causing and triggering you to respond immediately to a message, to immediately get lawyers involved and file motions and all of those things. That is your automatic response to it. So yes, it's a step of being completely uncomfortable and saying, okay, I'm not going to look at that aspect of it right now. I'm going to look at the facts, which I'm going to let you guys continue on with that.
Liz, I have a couple of things I want to say in response to that. First of all, I don't think I've ever heard it so succinctly about don't limit your thinking by putting that label narcissist on the other person, because there is this human tendency that once we own a hypothesis, we look for facts to prove the hypothesis. And that it just struck me as such a powerful observation, your suggestion not to do that, because I started out this earlier by saying, maybe if I wasn't clear, very few people on the planet Earth have the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. And that's because, first of all, they don't seek treatment. So unless they're in the court system in some sort of noxious way, like they're serial killers or they're going through a forensic custody evaluation or something, they're not getting evaluated. And then there's so many criteria. And when I have seen these cases come before the courts in forensic evaluations for court, the one piece of information that we're often missing, and it's a key diagnostic criterion, is that their onset of certain personality related characteristics before adulthood. And we often don't know about the narcissist childhood. So there just isn't objective evidence of that. And if the narcissist said, I had a normal childhood when they're being interviewed, that piece is missing. So many people don't ever get the diagnosis. So putting that label, because like everything you read about divorce says, are you divorcing a diagnosis? And it gives you some characteristics. And truth be told, I think my next observation to you was, I wanted to ask you about what other professionals are affiliated with the National Association of Divorce Professionals, and what other professionals can take the CDS training, because my narcissistic self assumed that NADP was all attorneys.
Right.
And I was delighted to find out when I connected with the organization and took the training that there were mental health professionals and real estate professionals and financial professionals and more. So
Sure.
so your comment helped me a lot to sort of articulate one of the big don'ts, and thank you. But could you tell our audience about what professionals are affiliated with NADP and who are eligible to take your training?
Absolutely. So what we do is we split up the four main industries that you're going to have to hire someone most likely for this. So whether it is the legal, and there's not just the family law professional, and this was what, before the NADP was launched, really, it's just the family law professional that was learning or educating themselves. But there's so many areas of law that will touch on the process, not every single time, but most of the time, whether it be estate planning attorneys. That's a huge thing. I mean, if you do not do something and you don't consult with an estate planning attorney, you're not doing yourself justice, because so many people have made such mistakes, especially when you're talking, again, we're talking all of this around that narcissistic mentality. But usually when you are dealing with someone that is more control, let's compare, we look at narcissism with words of like selfishness, control, power, all of those things, then most likely you're going to have to change documentation. You will have to change your will. You will have to change policies. And so many people don't do that and make a mistake and find out a little too late. So estate planning attorneys, real estate attorneys, you have also bankruptcy attorneys that may be an option for some people that they may have to do. There's private investigators that are part of the legal system. There's mediation. There's different forms of getting divorced. And we'll talk, I'm sure you'll talk a little bit about that too, that it's not just family law. You mentioned, Deborah, you're a collaborative law attorney. Most people don't even know what collaborative law is. Most people don't even know, both professionals, this is the crazy part, right? I was just at a real estate convention, and 99% of the realtors did not know what collaborative law is. And whoever is going through divorce out there, if you're going to hire someone, you want to make sure that they're educated on the different processes and what are all these professionals that touch on it, because if not, they may be guiding you to do something that you legally cannot do at that moment because you're not at the right stage for it. So we have the attorneys. In the financial world, there's tons. So you've got wealth managers, you've got insurance, right? Whether it's health insurance, life insurance policies, you have CPAs, you have forensic accountants. There's tremendous amount of financial, there's business appraisers, right? You may own a business together. So that's usually those professionals. I'm not going to read through it. There's like 60 or 70 professionals, but I'm sure if anybody's interested, you can go to thenadp.com and you can see the breakdown of professionals. Mental health coaches, tremendous amount of coaches, even to the point of career coaching, right? You may need to start and get a job again. And when we're talking about this mental health aspect of communication, you want to have, whether it's a divorce coach, whether it's a mental health professional, psychologist, psychiatrist, you want those people on your team, and you want to make sure, once again, that they are educated not just in their profession, but they are educated in the basic understanding of the entire process, and also that they have resources, that they have a team of experts, that you don't have to look everywhere. My gosh, building the NADP and the CDS, I did in a way that I did not have that when I was going through divorce. I'm like, what would I have wanted? Like, I would have loved to have met that realtor that knew everything, and that realtor had a whole slew of people, or, the attorney had a whole slew group of all of these professionals that they worked together, they communicated well, they were able to provide support for each other. That's what I wanted, right? It's like that, I guess. I don't like saying one-stop shop, but it's really being able to have that trusted guidance by one to many, right? So the financial, residential, and mental health, those are all the professionals. Now with the CDS, with the NADP, we have some strict vetting that we do, as far as you have to be licensed for at least 2 years in what you're doing. You can't have any disciplinary actions, which is another thing. So we wanted to say, okay, well, if clients are going to be looking for these professionals, they're going to want to get the right people, right resources, and be able to know that they've been vetted. You'd be surprised how many, and these are ex-clients, when I coached clients, how many people that they had hired, that the person that referred them, they trusted 100%, but they never looked and vetted. They never went out and vetted. They just been, they knew each other, they worked together. So these are things that we do at the NADP. The CDS is separate. So we did the CDS on the basis that anybody is dealing directly with the person going through divorce. So let's say a paralegal, right? A paralegal that is, I don't know, the viewers, I'm sure those of you that have had experience with attorneys, many times you'll be speaking to the paralegal or their assistants, because of course they can handle, when they have a lot of cases, they can't be on every single phone call. So you want to make sure that they are also, they've got some kind of knowledge in regards to the whole divorce process. So that's pretty much the professionals that are involved in both products, in both the NADP membership and also in the CDS and certification.
Thank you for explaining all that, and for that nice introduction of the main don'ts, what not to do when divorcing a narcissist. So next up, Susan, I would like to turn our attention to you. And I know that in my day-to-day practice, when I mention, I tell my clients, everyone in life should have a life coach or whatever, and a therapist. I happen to be married to one, and so I've got a therapist built in, and I get therapy every day, whether I want it or not. But a lot of people are not really clear on what the difference is between a divorce coach and a therapist who might be supporting them through their divorce process. So I would love to hear more about the divorce coach role, and how you carry out that role in the work that you do, and also have you talk about what are things people can do proactively if they're at that stage where they're not yet entering the divorce process, and they're feeling out the waters about, can I, should I, will I make it worse, do I need to do this, even if it's going to be painful, do I just need to rip off the Band-Aid? So like, what are the things that people should be thinking about to improve their experience through this process? Because I think one of the messages I want to have people walk away with is that while you might be walking on hot coals or sharp nails while you're going through this process at times, there is an out. So there's another side, and you can come through it. And it's especially important if you think ahead and you have the supports as you're going through it, your chances of coming out with, less damage and more hope and more growth on the other side of the process, as difficult and painful as it usually is going through it with a narcissist, the better off you'll be. So I'm going to turn it over to you, because I just love the work that you do in helping me help my clients get through this process.
Thank you so much. So first off, to address your question of the difference between a certified divorce coach and a therapist, I say that a certified divorce coach is trained in everything divorce and can help an individual pre, during, and or post-divorce. And we help clients focus forward. And in general, a therapist is trained to heal your past. So I tell all my clients, if you have a therapist, keep them. If you need one, I will find you one. I'm very pro-therapist, but they're not trained in everything divorce. And they're often, you don't leave a therapy session with an individual action plan. And my promise to my clients is at the end of every session, they leave with a plan. It can be baby steps or giant leaps and bounds, but they might call their accountant and email their attorney and talk to their children and text their soon to be ex. So a coach gets you unstuck. It is really the difference. And you have a plan of how you're going to get unstuck. A coach provides you with the resources that Liz was talking about, those vetted, trusted resources who are also trained in divorce. And so one thing I say about a coach is that a coach prepares you with the emotional aspect of divorce, so you're ready for the legal and financial aspects. Divorce is really finance and custody if you have children, and it's very emotional. And if you go in not thinking straight, not having your emotions in check, and not being realistic, you have an uphill battle. So those are just some of the differences between a coach and a therapist, and why during the divorce period you can benefit from both. Related to as far as your second question, which I believe was how to prepare for divorcing a narcissist. Everyone hears how half the country gets divorced, and that's true. And, you probably have a neighbor or coworker or relative who had an amicable divorce, and they still get along and can talk on the phone and can laugh, and they sign that divorce agreement and stick it in the drawer and barely have to pull it out. It is definitely the opposite when you're divorcing a narcissist. So it takes strategy, it takes plan. And, certainly we hit on some of the points of a narcissist. We know that they have very little empathy, they have big egos and are selfish. They definitely need lots of attention, and they don't have boundaries. And so when you go to divorce your narcissist, which I describe as a difficult ex, a toxic ex, it only takes one person to create a high conflict divorce. Your divorce is not going to look like those amicables that you've heard other people go through. You are on for a roller coaster. And I like what Liz said in the sense that everyone says to the judge, I'm divorcing a narcissist. So the judge doesn't believe anyone. I tell my clients, don't use the word narcissist, describe their behaviors. I call it profiling. Make a paragraph of the 5 worst things they've done. Give that to your attorney, so your attorney can tell the judge a description of why this person is truly evil and truly different than the average, oh, I hate my spouse because I'm divorcing them. And certainly it can be men or women who are narcissists. We know that. But you have to really get your ducks in order related to the children, setting them up for therapists. You don't want them to just start a therapist because you're getting divorced. Probably get them in therapy in advance. Make sure the lines of communication are open with the children. Often a narcissist not only manipulates you and gaslights you, and gaslights, by the way, is what the number one word in the year 2022 that was looked up. But they do that to children. So how to teach your children the truth about things on an age appropriate, developmentally appropriate level without throwing your spouse under the bus. And then financially, as much as you can, preparing for that, getting copies of documents, finding things that come in the mail. If you do online banking, finding that, and really try to go in prepared as much as you can, because I know we're going to get to questions in a little bit, but one of the questions that someone submitted was, what can you do in advance? And there's a lot of stuff that you really should do in advance to divorce a narcissist. They will move around money. They will play the poor me pity act. They will be spiteful. And I like what Liz said about the mindset of just labeling them a narcissist, because we cannot beat them. We're too kind. We don't think like the average person doesn't think like a narcissist. So you can't beat them at their game. But what you can do is prepare. And there's a lot of strategies you can do mentally for you and your children, and financially as well, to get ready for that ride to come up on top, so that you don't only survive, but thrive.
Thank you. Those were really, really good tips. So my role in tonight's, sort of presentation / question and answer session is to sort of provide the legal and the procedural challenges that people face when they are divorcing someone with narcissistic behaviors or tendencies. So I want to start before we dive into questions, because I know that, people are here to sort of get the bang for their time and they want to get their question answered. So we're going to do our best to do that. So I just want to take a second to say that having been in courtrooms for 30 years of practicing law, I have come to the realization, let me just back up, half of that was prosecuting criminals, including I specialize in domestic violence and sexual assault and child abuse cases. So those are, the kind of cases that are, you feel great about championing those, the people who are victimized who have no voice. But I have found that in the civil side of things and in family law matters, divorce and custody and domestic violence, protective order situations, etc., that there's sort of a different systemic view of those situations. In the criminal code, we have right and wrong. It's very much moral, right? And so our criminal code is based in societal morals and values. And if you've crossed a line, you've broken a law, it seems pretty straightforward that you should be held accountable. In family law, it's a lot less gray, and there's a lot more room for people to get sort of murky and muddy, and and judges, I think, are more inclined to think that there's blame and fault to spread around across the couple or across the family unit, as opposed to looking at things in the black and white, right and wrong way of the criminal law. And so I came to realize really early on, from switching to the criminal law as a prosecutor to doing family law, that courts are no places for families to be. That it's just, the court system isn't built around that, even though every state of the country has a family court. I don't know, it doesn't do well in that situation, perhaps because it's less black and white and more in the gray area. But I urge my clients, wherever possible, to avoid the courtroom battle at all costs, and to use that as the last resort, not the starting point. So a lot of people are sort of societally taught, or maybe their neighbors, ran off to court, and that was the first, I'm going to file first for divorce before my spouse files against me. And in New York, where we had fault-based divorce, that was a thing. You wanted to be the one saying the other person was at fault before you were accused of being at fault. And now we don't have that anymore, but there's still that old sort of knee-jerk reaction to run off to the courthouse. So especially if you have a person with narcissistic traits on the other side of this divorce matter, I'm going to suggest to you and challenge you to think about other alternatives, including mediation, and I'm a trained mediator, and or collaboration. And you may be thinking, Deborah, are you insane? Have you been smoking something weird? Because I can't sit in the room and I can't reason or negotiate with this person. They're always right and I'm always wrong, right? But you know what? If you know this person with the narcissistic traits, they can charm the pants off of anyone, including every jurist in every court in America. They're going to walk in and they're going to gaslight that judge and say, she's crazy or he's crazy, and I'm the normal one and I'm the sane one, and look at what I've had to deal with. This person is so difficult. They're going to turn it on you, and they're going to gaslight everybody and their lawyer. They're going to charm their lawyer, and then everybody's going to think that you are the problem and that not the narcissist. So it's the court system ends up being a tool the narcissist uses to beat you down, to wear you out financially, to wear you out emotionally, and to just railroad you. And if you don't have an attorney who sees this and knows how to deal with it and pull together a team around you, then your own attorney is going to be helpless in that situation, because the whole, your spouse's attorney, the judge, the court staff, everybody's going to think that the narcissist is the charming, sane one, and you're the one who's crazy because you show up stressed. So I think courts are really like something that you have to think long and hard about as your first course of action. And believe it or not, if you find the right mediator with high conflict mediation training skills, and you find the right collaborative team who understands and recognizes and can hold the narcissist in check and hold the narcissist accountable and test the narcissist view of reality, because there's a team of people working together with a common goal, that you could potentially have a better outcome with a lot less expense and a lot less stress and a lot less torture, because you are not made the target in that setting like you would be if you were in the courthouse. And when you challenge the narcissist to a plaintiff versus defendant battle, then they're going in battle mode. Right. And that's the caption in your divorce case. It's Mr. versus Mrs. or Mrs. versus Mr. It's adversarial. And the narcissist is like, game on, I'm going at it. And so if you have to be there in the courtroom because your narcissist won't go to mediation or engage in collaborative divorce with you, or you're not in a state where those modalities are suggested or even mandatorily referred as a necessary step before you can have a judge decide your case, New York, unfortunately, is not a mandatory mediation state or compulsory mediation state. If you can't, then what you want is an attorney who recognizes the challenges of dealing with a high conflict divorce and who has that network of professionals that they can bring in. It's your posse, your posse's coming in and we're going to ride into, Dry Gulch for the gun battle, so to speak. And you're protected in that situation, and you might ultimately fare better in the end if you have an attorney who understands the complexities and the challenges of that situation. So that's my 2 cents or 12 cents or whatever I throw it on. But now we're going to turn to your questions. I promise we're going to leave time for all those questions. So some of these questions are best answered by, one of the disciplines amongst the three of us. So we're going to kind of divide and conquer a little bit, or some of us may weigh in on a question if we have our own unique professional perspective to offer. So I'm just going to go through kind of the list of submitted questions. We'll do it as quickly as we can, so hopefully we can get them all. So first question on my list is, how do I know whether my spouse is a narcissist? And if he or she is, can I inform my attorney before I start my divorce? So Susan, would you like to start on that one? And then maybe I'll weigh in.
Sure. I hinted a little on that when I used the word profiling the narcissist. So if you just go into your divorce attorney and say, I'm divorcing a narcissist, you have experience with that, they're not going to know what level of the spectrum you are. Do you just hate your spouse? Are they acting selfish? Or is this person a true evil, criminal, toxic, unstable psychopath, right? And so if you go in with that profile and say, I wrote out this paragraph, it's the 5 worst things they've done in the last 20 months, that will give them true insight that they can be like, oh, this is nothing, or oh my gosh, in my 35-year career, I've never heard of anything like that. So I think if you can explain and describe some things they've done, not every little thing, but pick the 5 biggest, it's very eye-opening to your attorney. And I do agree with you, Deb, that mediation, you always want to try to go that route. It's less expensive. It happens quicker. And if you end up the court route, I say, there's 2 battles. There's the battle in the courtroom where you have to look like you're co-parenting even, and I know we're going to get to co-parenting later, but even if you're really having to parallel parent. So how you act for that judge, and both of you hit on it when you said that your narcissistic ex can trigger you to look like the crazy one. And research shows it takes about a year for the judge to see who is crazy and who is not, because often they convince their attorney. And their attorney is truly there defending them, thinking that they are fighting the right battle, and fighting for the right causes. So I do think that you should inform them through description of what you've had to deal with, and what you're worried about. And I always say, make sure you believe the threats. If you feel threatened, you believe it. And I know mediation and collaboration is harder if you're sitting across the table from someone who you feel your safety is at an issue, if there's a restraining order, or if you feel someone's not disclosing money, it makes it harder to mediate or collaborate. But I'm sure Deb has experience in saying, you know what, let's see what we can do out of court before we bring it to court. Because the bottom line is, when you're in court, the judge is making the decisions and you lose the right to kind of compromise and negotiate the decisions for you and your family in the future.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on a couple of things. One is, if you have the kinds of situations where there may be a feeling or of proof that somebody is trying to hide assets, or you feel unsafe, First of all, I don't subscribe to the notion that if there has been just the fact that there's a history of domestic violence, which is broadly defined as any exertion of power control over another person. So that could be financial control or emotional control, as well as physical violence. So except in the most extreme cases of physical violence, I don't disqualify people from being considered for mediation or collaboration by the existence of a prior domestic violence component to their relationship. But I would steer people probably towards collaboration over mediation in those situations, because then we can hire the appropriate divorce coach or team leader in the collaborative setting who has the skills and the knowledge to recognize, deal with, and appropriately help the team address those issues of power and control or the narcissistic tendencies. And in collaboration, you can have financial neutrals, including forensic accountants, chasing down the money. And so that's a great setting for people who have that combination of possible narcissistic personality traits, domestic violence or abuse, power and control tactics being exercised, and control over the money. I mean, that's a very common thing in relationships when there's a narcissist who controls the finances, is that they have all the passwords, they have all the information, they own the information, because information is power, and it's power over you. So going into the divorce process in that situation can feel very unsettling, because all of a sudden you're like, I don't know. Your attorney's asking you, what do you own and who do you owe? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The other person's controlling all of that, and I've been in the dark. So
Debra, can I add something to it? Because there's an important point that I think ties everything in when you were talking about at the beginning with the court. And when someone pegs somebody as a narcissist, and you were right that it's really very challenging to win. Susan was right. You're never going to beat a narcissist at their game. But again, this is going back to diagnosing someone as a narcissist. So for example, not every narcissistic ex-spouse is going to be able to gaslight everybody. They might only be able to gaslight their ex-spouse because they've been with them for 20 years and they know how to do it, and they know. So when someone comes out of this thinking, oh my God, this is a lost cause, they're a narcissist, they're going to be able to convince everybody. On the other aspect, that's not great in thinking, because then that's going to sway them away from the possibility of mediating and thinking, I'm going to have to fight to the end or else I'm not going to win. Where that may not be the case, because it may very well be that that person has just mastered how to control that individual person, and that you have all these other professionals that will be able to help guide the process better. So that's sort of the other aspect of not necessarily going in. And I love what Susan said about going in and just focus on the behaviors. One thing that I always teach is that people are not their behaviors. The minute you label someone, you leave very little room for any kind of adjustments, like I said at the beginning. So if you just focus on the actual actions, that's what's challenging you, and you go up to the professional, it helps you so much more for that attorney. Hopefully they're like Debra that want to be able to guide you effectively and not run to court and say, okay, well, based on these behaviors, I think that we can take these steps first and try and see what happens. So I thought that was just ties everything in.
thank you. That's why we have 3 different professional backgrounds and perspectives here, because we all have sort of a different thing we focus in on. And that's just great. I'm so glad that you guys are here, because I think it's adding a lot of value for the audience. All right, let's keep plugging forward. Some of these we've addressed in our comments. So if your question didn't get answered, in our introductory remarks, I think we've covered it. So I'm going to move to what are some classic tactics a narcissist uses, Susan, and which ones are most common, and how can I be prepared to be ready to handle those?
So, well, we mentioned the word gaslighting, and, I do recommend that if you think you're being gaslighted, to record something, not that you're ever recording for court, but record it to listen back for your own sanity and say, I knew I said that, or I knew he said that in a conversation, so that you don't feel you're gone crazy. And I do recommend for children a game called I Know My Truth. And so you say, the sky is blue, and they say, yes. And you say, my eyes are purple. And they say, no, I know my truth. Your eyes are not purple, and you go through some very concrete things, but then you go into some abstract things. So trying to teach children to trust their gut and know what is true and what is not true. So one thing is the gaslighting, and another thing is the love bombing. And, Liz said it early on, think back to why you fell for them in the first place, right? And so very often when you're with a narcissist, there's cycles where they treat you awful, but then there's other cycles you want them to treat you the way they used to. You love that. It's a mind-body connection. And so they know. They bring you back in with what's called love bombing, and really being aware and standing firm on that. And that's when it's not going in alone, having a coach, having a therapist, having a support group of people who understand what's going on, and refusing to allow yourself to get back on that merry-go-round cycle of when they try to love bomb you and pull you back in. That's why so often, Deborah, I'm sure you've heard of clients who got a restraining order and then let it go, and got it and let it go. Well, the judges very often won't keep giving it. They're going to think you're crying wolf, and they're letting it go because they're being love bombed. They're being tricked. So I always say, you get a restraining order, you got it for a reason, you keep it, you don't let it go.
That's great advice. Thanks. So one of our audience members has asked, how will a narcissist react if I'm the one who starts the divorce, and will I make it worse if I'm the one, as opposed to wait for them to let them start it?
We hit on this a little, where we said they could play the pity card to the children, to the friends, and poor me, can you believe it? I do all this, and this is what they, and do the pity card, or they could do the opposite and be very spiteful, withdraw all the money, badmouth you around town, to your work, to your friends, to your family, to your children, try to turn everyone against you. They can also be the ones to very quickly get re-engaged. Oh, look, I'm engaged already. See, it couldn't have been me, because look, I have this great girl who's with me already. It was them, because why would someone new come with me if I had any problems? So any of those three things are very common.
Wow, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about those in that order, but it's true now that I reflect on it, I suppose. All right, so this is important. I think we should touch on it. I'd like to hear your perspective, Susan, and I may weigh in from a legal perspective, but there's a couple of questions that I've sort of lumped into one, because there's a common theme, about how do I protect myself from abuse as I'm going through a separation? Should I get an order of protection? And how do I handle if my ex is really pressing to get me back and win me back?
Okay, well, the win back, we know we talked about for the love bombing, and you have to trust your gut and just say you need a break, and maybe even convincing them, give me space and maybe I'll come back, but force me back and I'll be suffocated and I won't stay. So you really have to be strong on that. And if you don't think you can, seek other professionals to help you, not to pick up the phone. I have many clients who I'll say, I don't care how many times you call or text me, do not go after them, because you're going to get back in that cycle. So whether it's a friend or professional or someone who can support you from going back into that pattern. As far as any abuse, I'm a true believer in documenting everything, whether it's video recording, audio recording, or on a calendar. And I tell all my clients, go to the dollar store or print out a separate calendar online and just have that related to your exes or soon to be exes behaviors for you and your children. Don't write it on the same calendar as your doctor appointments and your work commitments. Often if it comes to subpoenas, they will subpoena your whole calendar if you mention it. So you just want to have a calendar documenting your narcissist behaviors to you and your children, that you're happy to turn over to the court records.
And from a legal perspective, I want to say safety always comes first. So if you or your children are not safe, don't call your lawyer, call the police. If it's an immediate threat to safety or health or life, then call your lawyer when you're in a safe spot. Access your local domestic violence support groups and shelters if you need to, if it's that serious. And definitely, even if you're not ready to go the step of getting a protective order, but you're worried about the safety of you and your children, consult with your local domestic violence support agency, because they can help you build a safety plan, and they can teach you how to talk to your children about safety planning, so that if the children are in a situation where the abuser is threatening them, that they have a safe way to signal you or someone safe. And there's ways to do this. I'm not an expert in it, but I used to know all these things because working with victims of domestic and sexual violence when I was a prosecutor, and still seeing that happening, unfortunately, in all too many relationships that come through my law firm and mediation company now. So safety first, just, always make sure, and when in doubt, reach out to a domestic violence advocacy organization, and they can help steer you in the right direction, and they can help follow you to court and assist you with filing for an emergency protective order. These things tend to happen after hours when you're not going to always get a law firm on the phone, but these agencies are wonderful, and they're there for you. So please make sure you access those and make sure you keep yourself and your children safe. That's the most important thing. All right. Liz, I'd like to have you field the next question, which is, how do I know what's the right attorney to hire if I am about to separate or divorce a narcissistic person?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think all attorneys deal with narcissistic, spouses or future spouses of their clients. But I think first of all, and we sort of touched on in the beginning, is you want to ask the right questions when you are going to hire an attorney. That's first off. And that would be, are they equipped with the right resources? Do they have a team of professionals that if needed? I think it's a combination of what Susan said, what we said, go in there, not saying I'm divorcing a narcissist, but I'm divorcing someone that has done this in the past few years. These are the behaviors. Are you equipped, and what do you recommend? And hear what they say, because ultimately, I think you made it very clear, Debra, at the beginning. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, we're going to just go for the jugular, because at the end of the day, that may be the really wrong way of going at the right at the get-go. As we know that if you're dealing with a true narcissist, there's no logic involved. There's no logic like, oh no, this is not good for the kids. Nobody. And that's what I tend to find, is that you'll have the person that is, and I don't like calling it a victim, but the person that it feels, that they are in the situation, and not feels, but that they are the weaker one in the situation. They're experiencing the gaslighting, that they're really looking out for the best interest of the child, not the narcissist, clearly. So you want to look out for an attorney that is going to be looking at the best interest of your children, if you have children, and that is equipped with the right education, that their staff has the right education, and they have the resources. So that's what I would recommend. Go to, whether it's sites, organizations, associations that you know that they're part of, and make sure that you're getting good referrals. Make sure that you're looking up, look at the history of this attorney as far as what kind of presentations, like look at what you're doing. Like if I were going through it, and even though I do think you're fabulous, I'm not saying it because I'm on here with you. When I met you, we've had a lot of attorneys and legal professionals. I immediately fell in love with Debra because I saw right away, this is the kind of attorney that is going to watch out for the best interest of my children, especially if I'm dealing with a narcissistic spouse. So those are my recommendations in that aspect.
Thank you. I wasn't looking for a plug, but that was very sweet. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to start by answering the next question because it seems like it's my purview. So the question is, can I stop my narcissistic ex from filing motions? It seems like every week he's filing something new. All right, so I hear a lot, every lawyer hears, can that person sue me? And the answer is, yeah, the courthouse doors are open for anybody who wants to file anything. The question is, can they prove it? Can they sustain it? Is it viable? So in the divorce action, that same principle tends to apply. And I can't remember if it was Liz or Susan who said it takes about a year for the judge to figure out who's the crazy one and who's the level-headed one. So early on in the case, the narcissist can probably get away with filing motion after motion after motion. Now, after a while, if there's no basis to those motions, they're not prevailing on those motions, your attorney will certainly be on the lookout for that and will start upping the pushback with educating the judge that we're on motion number 3, now we're on motion number 6, now we're on motion number 8, and none of them have been granted in favor of the moving party. So I want counsel fees, I want sanctions, I want a referee appointed to review the motions before they can even be filed so that I don't have to pay my attorney to respond to bullshit, honestly. Sorry, Facebook. I wasn't supposed to say that. But anyway, so there are things you can do, but I think that if you are in the litigation setting, you probably are at risk of enduring some of those frivolous motions for a little while before the judge figures out who's playing the system and who's the victim of the person playing the system. I hate to say that, but I think that judges try to give both parties the benefit of the doubt early on, and they really don't know. They don't know your situation and your relationship, and so they see a whole lot of stuff. Some of them are cleaner and some are messier than others, and when they're handling these divorces, so they're trying to figure out, where is your case falling. So the narcissist who's abusing the process is probably going to get away with it for a little while. And if you have a good attorney who's astute to it, you can shut that down a little sooner than maybe an attorney who's like, well, what are you going to do? Everybody's entitled to access to the court.
Yeah, and there's so many other professionals, right, too, that are involved. We're talking about the judges, but how about the guardian ad litem, the parenting coordinators, all the, the mental health professionals that are brought into the cases? They're the ones that are also going to decide whether you're the narcissist or they're the narcissist. And they're looking at this from a completely different lens than you are. I've seen so many cases with my ex-clients that the actual caring parent was ordered, like, there were tremendous amounts of orders against them that the judge was approving and saying, yeah, we think that mother is wrong. So many aspects of reunification, all those areas that you just don't know. So you're basically giving control to not just the judge, but many other people in the process.
Right. It's sad. I know these are challenging cases. It's really, professionals who work in this arena who have the guts to support clients going through this are a special breed, because they are uniquely challenging, and they're really challenging for the clients, for sure. So that is a good segue to the next question, which is it possible to even co-parent with a narcissist? And the questioner went on to say, I feel like doing so is putting my child in danger. So I would love to hear both of your insights on this, and whoever wants to go first, but I think that you both have some good insights.
I had touched on it slightly beforehand. I believe there's often two battles. One, that you show the judge you're trying to co-parent, you're trying to communicate effectively, you're trying to, do the right thing. And one is out of court, where you're parallel parenting, where you realize that you truly cannot co-parent in the way that your neighbors and friends and coworkers do. And so you do the best you can out of court as well. So there's two battles going on. There is the term gray rock, which many of you have heard with a narcissist, where you just literally don't respond. But obviously, if you have children, you can't not respond, because that'll come back and bite you in court. So we use the term yellow rock, which is coined by Tina Swithin from One Mom's Battle, who deals with the high conflict divorce coach training. And yellow rock is just responding about the children, no niceties, and then how to respond and when to respond, right? So if it's not emergency, you don't always need to respond instantaneously. Often the correspondence might be on, there's numerous parenting apps. The most recognized one, I think, around the country is Our Family Wizard, but there's about a dozen that other courts do recognize as well. But, making sure you're staying classy and responding. You don't ever want them to say that you're alienating the children. You don't want them to say that you're not responding, you're not including them on decisions that they're entitled to be included on. So really, Tina Swithin, I'll cite her again, has a list of canned responses that I also share. I don't take credit for it, but you can Google it. And so when they say something, you just acknowledge, I hear what you say and I disagree, so that they can't say you don't respond. So knowing how to stay classy and to do your job without letting them trigger you and bring you down, because often, sadly, that's their goal.
Yeah. I would agree with everything Susan says. And I think that in most cases, parallel parenting is really the way to go when you're actually doing the parenting aspect, not when you're in your household. And your mindset has to go away from the aspect that you're dealing with a narcissist. You're never going to be able to control them, and you're never going to be able to control what's going on in that household. That's why there is a lot of parental alienation due to the narcissism. However, if you focus on what tools you can give your children, because they're going to be dealing with this. Clearly, if you're dealing with a narcissist, they may be that, parent that is fantastic with the kids when they're there. On most cases, there are going to be signs that they display, and they're going to want control over the children as well, not just you. So they will be putting the children into situations that they shouldn't be, but that doesn't mean that you as a parent should be doing the same thing, which is usually the go-to model, because you're just trying to save something here, and you're trying to make sure that you educate your children that that's not right, that this is what should be happening, and that you're not that bad person, and that you're not, and you're in like defense mode. Again, feeding to this aspect of that other parent being a narcissist, where you should be doing the polar opposite and really just focusing on you as a healthy parent, in what you would want, what tools you would want. If just like if your kid was being bullied in school, right? Like, what tools do you want to get rid of the bully, or do you want to teach your kids how to actually look at things objectively and see reality closest to reality, rather than just having an assumption about it? So that would be my recommendation.
Those are both, you both offered some really great insights. I would like to say, just from a legal perspective, that be mindful that everything you say, everything you type in an email or a text, every picture you take, and everything you post on social media will find its way to the judge's eyes or ears. So I love how Susan said, keep it classy. I actually have my clients sign a contract about what they will and will not do when communicating with their soon-to-be ex or their ex, or about social media, how they behave on social media, because it will make its way to the judge. So with that said, and Liz, you said it, we can't control others. We can only control ourselves and how we respond or react. So if you let that narcissist get under your skin, or that, just anybody who's nasty and abusive, and whether or not they qualify as narcissist, they send you that text where they berate you as a mother, they call you sleazy and slutty or whatever, or they call you a drunk, or they call you this, or they call you that. And then they throw something in there that's legitimately about the children. So first of all, you don't have to respond to every text if it's not about the children or about something that requires a response. So you need to let the sticks and stones, right? Like, not break your bones. Like, some of that shit needs to just roll and let it go. But when you do respond, you don't have to respond to every aspect of the text. So what Susan is saying is parse out if somewhere in there was, and I'm sure you're not going to pick Jimmy up from soccer on time yet again, then respond, I will be on time to pick Jimmy up at 5:30. That's all you need to say in all the other insults and everything that were hurled at you and the criticism of your parenting. And if you let it get in your brain and you let it get in your psyche, then the tendency is to fire back a 3-page long text message like the one you just got that was totally unnecessary, and it was laden with relationship things and insults and so on and so forth. So I would urge people to try to remember that they're moving out of romantic partner lane to co-parent lane, to being the co-CEOs of their children's life between two homes. So if you wouldn't say it to a coworker, if you wouldn't say it to your boss, if your coworker said something completely out of the work zone to you and commented on your dress or your clothing or your out of work habits and who you're dating, you don't have to respond to that, and you probably wouldn't respond to that. So don't respond to that, because you're now leaving the romantic zone and you're going into the co-CEO of your children's life zone. And try to think in those terms, because it is easy to get triggered by the continued barrage of insults and so on and so forth, and to feel that you need to just fire something back. And that only keeps pouring gasoline on the fire. And if you don't give the fire oxygen, what happens to it? It dies, right? The fire goes out if it doesn't have oxygen. So don't give those little fires, don't give them oxygen, and things will calm down. You will be surprised. At first, the narcissist will be really irritated that you're not taking the bait and you're being really civil and direct and short and succinct, but it'll drive them crazy for a little while. But when they know they're not getting under your skin, then they're going to find somebody else to bother, because they know it's not working on you anymore. So with that, we do have more questions. I'm mindful the time is 8:05. So I want to say to our audience, if you have to go, we're sorry, we're running over. To my guests, if you have to go, I get it. You're donating your time here, and that's great. I will stick around trying to answer some more questions, and I don't know if you guys are up for it, and this will be recorded. So if you have to hop off because you were counting on us to go 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time, never fear. You come back and see the recording. And if you reach out, we'll even email it to you if that's easier and more convenient for you. So you don't have to come back to the Facebook page of Whitson Law Firm and find it again. So we'll go through a few more things and then we'll try to wrap it up. I want to make sure that we get most of the important or heavy hitting questions answered so that people feel like they got what they came for. So that being said, let's see. Susan, any other suggestions? We have a question of how to best take care of myself and my children while going through this. Then we're talking about getting professionals and coaches and therapists. Anything else that you have?
I think acknowledging that divorce is a marathon, not a race. It's not going to be done overnight. So preparing for that, putting things on your calendar to look forward to, self-care. There's a lot of self-care that doesn't cost any money, a long bubble bath, a long walk, things that you can look forward to get through it. Thinking of life as a pizza. And one slice is the divorce, one is the kids, one is your hobbies, one is your job, one is your other family and friends, and not letting your ex consume you, I think is really important. And I truly believe the best revenge is living a happy life, right? Like not letting them ruin your life and enjoying that next chapter. So keep pushing through, but take that time for self-care.
Great. So there's a question that I want to touch on, and it is the person asked, is there a way to make sure that a narcissist ends up with less custody? I'm going to assume they mean less parenting time, but I don't know if I should assume that. Maybe they mean less legal rights or fewer legal rights as well. And does narcissism qualify as mental illness? So there's two components, one legal and one sort of mental health related. So maybe Susan, if you start with the mental health piece of it, I could try to talk about the legal.
Sure. So we hit on it slightly when we talked about divorcing a narcissist is different. You don't just put your contract in the drawer and never have to look at it. There is such a thing as post-separation abuse, post-divorce abuse when you divorce a narcissist, especially if you have children. You're going to have many years ahead where you have to communicate with them. So I think it is important to prepare for that, to get all the details in the contract right the first time so you are less likely to go back to court. But to really know that you have resources there, including coaches who are trained in high conflict and in post-divorce abuse and post-separation transition and recovery, and how to help you really come up with a plan and get through it, and know that you're not alone. Look at all the resources that Liz has through National Association of Divorce Professionals. And Deb, obviously, we have some clients in common as well. No, you are not alone. That when you go with a narcissist, gather that team of professionals and gather that team of your friends and family who understand what you're up against.
Yeah, and from a legal perspective, as I mentioned much earlier in the program, that very few people actually get the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder placed on them by a qualified professional. So does it qualify as a mental illness? I guess you would need to have some sort of diagnosis in the mental illness category. But let me say that I don't want to stigmatize mental illness. There are lots of people out there who are very fine parents who have mental illness diagnoses or mental health diagnoses, and they manage them and they get them treated and they take charge of those situations. And so I really don't want to stigmatize that. Nobody should lose their children because of a mental health disorder that they're treating and managing. It's when you're not treating it, just like if you have a substance abuse disorder and it's active, you're not in sobriety and remission, you are actively abusing illegal substances, that may impact your ability to safely parent your children.
Yeah.
And I'll add one comment to that. When I refer to post-separation abuse and the documentation, sometimes you say, I don't want to give shared custody, but it's easier to fight it at the back end when you go in with a calendar of documentation for the last 4 to 6 months and all the incidents that occurred. And you say, Your Honor, I tried to co-parent, I tried to have shared parenting, and it didn't work. And now we need to modify it, then fighting it up front.
Right.
Yeah.
And we often see results in New York. New York, our standard is in many states is our standard in New York is the best interest of the child. The family court or the divorce court must decide what's in the best interest of the child. That's very broad. That's very subjective. That's very fact-based. So there's not a lot of case law to help illustrate what does that really mean. And is my situation similar to another one a court has examined and who won in that case? So, but we do see a trend in New York State, and particularly in the upstate area of New York, where I practice or my practice covers, of something called the willingness to foster a relationship with the other parent. And that's where the documentation that Susan has been hitting on here tonight, document the behaviors, right? Let's not hang our hat on a diagnosis or something. Document the behaviors. And so if you can demonstrate that you are the parent willing to attempt to foster a relationship with the co-parent, but the other parent is interfering, stopping, tainting, poisoning the relationship with the children toward you, and you can show that by their behaviors, not because they're mentally unstable or they're a narcissist, but their behaviors have the tendency to interfere with the parental relationship between you and your children, then you have a story to tell to say to the judge. The number one factor in upstate New York is the willingness or lack of willingness to foster a relationship with the other parent. I am doing everything I can, and God knows they're making it really hard on me, but they are working actively to not foster a relationship between the children and me. And that favors me as the custodial parent, and therefore I should have legal custody and I should have more time with the children. So that's where you want to make your fight strategically, your arguments strategically, not with they're a crazy narcissist. And I just can't do that.
Correct. That will not win you what you want to win anywhere.
I think one of the things that we haven't touched on that really is a very important variable is financial situation. And when you're trying to figure out how to deal with the narcissistic ex or how to do the divorce, all of that, I think finances come into play, and that will ultimately respond if you can, because yes, if you are going to be butting heads, they're not going to cave necessarily. A true narcissist will not cave. That may be involving a lot of money that you might not have to fight that battle, and you need that in other areas to focus in on. And that's why you need to have the right guidance by the proper divorce coach, family law attorney that will be able to say, hey, within your situation, this is what I think is going to be the best course of action to get started with.
I want to add on one more thing, because we've kind of been talking about that, is that when you're talking about the best professionals who can handle it, it's also the professionals who can stomach it. It's a long course, and often many of the same attorneys get the high conflict cases because they can stomach it. So you're looking for someone who can go the long ride with you and who can stomach it, but who also has those resources to help you and who knows that you're not crazy. Many of the clients are in crisis, and Liz goes into detail in her training about when someone's in crisis, how the brain responds. And like, I always have faith in my clients that yes, their spouse is triggering them and making them appear crazy, but I know they were normal before. I know it's the situation, and I know after everything will be fine. Versus some attorneys will see someone appear crazy because they're being threatened to lose their money and their children and everything. And so being able to recognize and have faith in your client, and with a coach, calming them down. My clients always leave the sessions feeling better. I say, bring it on. Let's deal with the biggest issues first, right? Not the small issues. So you are looking for a certain type of professional who not only gets you, but gets the situation and is in it to help you through the ups and downs as well.
Absolutely.
I would like to also say something that sounds counterintuitive, but it has proven itself to be true over and over in cases that I work on. When you spread the supports across a team of professionals and you look for an organization where, like in my office, my staff all eventually, sometimes they're brand new and they're not certified divorce specialist trained, but my staff, no matter if it's the person answering the phone or the lawyer handling your case or the paralegal in between, get certified divorce specialist training, so that when you're calling stressed and irritated and you say, I got the most ugly texts and I'm about to send back a really awful response, that those folks can talk you off the ledge, but you don't need to speak to the most expensive person on your team. Sorry to say, it's usually the lawyer. So if you can have other people in your support network who are supporting you through that, and in our office, who can give those of us, because it is hard work and it can be draining. It's very rewarding, but it can be draining and exhausting. So we can spread it around. So if paralegal one is like, oh my gosh, it's been nothing but, Mrs. Smith all week and I love her, but I'm worn out, someone else can talk to Mrs. Smith when she answers the phone and talk her through that situation. So, if you have the financial professional and the divorce coach and a good therapist in your corner, you have more people that you're paying, but you're going to get better results, and you're going to spread the same amount of dollars around to a number of people who are wrapping their arms around you, and you're not wearing down that one person that you're calling with every little thing. Look, we get it. We know that, as hard as our job is, you're the one living it. So we know that you're doing the really hard work, and we're just here, on the sidelines, coaching and guiding you and supporting you. But it really
can I say something, just because, just hearing you talk, and I don't know if your viewers know, I don't know if whoever's here, that you wrote a fantastic book, that Divorce Like a Pro, because in it really helps you understand what we started this whole conversation, that you don't necessarily, the courtroom may not necessarily be the place for you. It might, in some cases, listen, it ends up that sometimes it might end up there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. There's other options. And when I hear you talking about, how you have your staff all of CDS, and you really look at this experience for the client completely holistically. You have the team, you've written a book about how to do this really in a way that is going to be the smoothest for you and your family with a better outcome. I think it's just fantastic. So if anybody here hasn't read the book, they should, that's for sure.
Thanks, Liz. My inspiration for the book was the fact that I find myself so many times a day talking people through the various options and saying divorce should be your last resort. We talk about courts of the last resort, meaning our highest appeal court, but the divorce court, the family court, should be your last resort. And they're there for you if that's the only option you have to handle your family law situations. And most judges really mean well, and they really try to get it right, but they know a tiny little snapshot of your life and of your finances and your children. They're never going to know your children the way you know your children. They're never going to know their dreams, their aspirations, their talents, their challenges the way you do. So they're never going to get it as right as in your heart you can do. You just got to figure out a way to get the other person to say yes to that outcome.
Absolutely.
So,
with
anyway,
other
thanks for mentioning the book.
People need to, those are the things that viewers, they need to educate themselves. I mean, like Susan does a tremendous amount of work too, that I don't know if your viewers know. And I know that I'm like, saying these, but I'm proud of both of you, first of all. And I mean, Susan, she leads a special needs chapter for the NADP, and she has such passion and such wisdom on being able to help clients really holistic. There are quite a few divorce coaches out there, and they're great divorce coaches, but then there's really exceptional divorce coaches. And I have to say that Susan is an exceptional divorce coach. So
thank you. I really appreciate that, especially coming from you. So thank you.
Very true.
Yeah.
So I want to ask each of you, let's start with you, Liz. So for professionals who may be joining in or watching this after the fact, what can they look forward to coming out of the National Association of Divorce Professionals and the CDS program anytime soon? And for our audience who maybe are clients or potential clients of some of the professionals that your organization supports and trains, what's new
for us? Well, first of all, if anybody that is contemplating divorce, I would highly recommend going to either the NADP.com to our directory. It's public facing. You can see those members, as well as the CDS, which is the CDStraining.com. That would be a great start for you to really see. And a lot of them communicate already with each other, so they have their team. As far as the professionals, we do the CDS training, either hybrid, which I have one coming up this week, actually, where I teach live online, or it's available on demand. We also have a great program that we're going to be launching, and Debra is part of that, which are law firms that have their entire practice or the majority of their practice trained as CDS. So they're CDS aligned firm. And also the NADP, if you're a professional, you get to come on once a month. We have monthly member meetings. We have monthly marketing workshops as well for the professionals, really give them an opportunity to learn and educate themselves as best possible. So just going to the website is the best thing to be able, there's always something there for the professionals.
It really is. It's like a great one-stop shopping for all sorts of resources and connections. So Susan, tell us how people can find you, reach you online or otherwise, and what's coming next for the things you're involved in. What can people look for?
Thank you. I always give out my phone number, the 551-444-2609. I tell people I turn it off when I sleep, so you can literally text me 24/7, or my website, www.divorcecoachplus.com. Really here for people. I get it. I've been through the high conflict divorce. As Liz said, I also have 3 children, my oldest with severe special needs. Obviously, there's a lot of links with narcissists and special needs children. And so helping you get through that and all the additional problems. And we mentioned early on, divorce coaches normally help one individual. Something new I've been doing in the year 2022, and it'll continue in 2023, is many people do move on to that happier chapter, that next chapter, and they get remarried, but they're still having to deal with the narcissistic ex. So I have taken the new couple and help coach them on having to deal with the narcissistic ex-spouse so that that ex doesn't tear apart that new marriage. And I think that's really important, and there's a need for it. So it's a little niche that I found, and I'm happy to share with your audience. I also will mention I am a board member for Surviving Sisters of Narcissistic Abuse, SSONA. You can find on Facebook, which is a great group of women. And we do know narcissists are not just men or women. I do have some resources as well if you're a male and you're divorcing a female narcissist, or obviously same-sex marriages have this, it's anyone. So reach out to me, take that free consult. Everything's confidential and non-judgmental. I'm here to get you through it. That's why I'm in it.
That's so amazing. I love all the things that you have your hand in, and I know you're a good resource. So I want to close by saying that I know these lovely women professionals because Susan and I were in a CDS training program taught by Liz, and that's how the 3 of us came together, and the rest, as they say, shall be history, I suppose. But you all know that you can find me here on Facebook on the Whitson Law Firm Facebook page. I am also CEO and founder of Mediated Online Solutions, so you can find me at whitsonlawfirm.com, mediatedonlinesolutions.com. We're on every social platform under both of those names, and we base our law firm practice out of Elizabethtown, New York, and you can reach us at 518-412-4111. We would all love to hear from you, even if it's just to connect you with a resource in your immediate area. If you're not in an area that we serve, or you are looking for a specialty that is not our personal specialty, we've got lots of connections, thanks in part to NADP being a clearinghouse for lots of great professionals who are geared up to responding to divorcing clients in whatever needs that they may have, and whatever professional practice that you might need support from. So thank you all. I appreciate everybody who hung around for 20 or so minutes extra. If you've missed the full live program and you want the replay, just reach out. We will be happy to put it in your inbox, so you can find it on the whitsonlawfirm.com Facebook page, and maybe Liz and Susan will be sharing the replay on their own social platforms as well. Liz, Susan, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight and your wisdom, and I hope that everybody got everything that they wanted to get out of this program. I know I learned a lot. Anyway, any parting thoughts before we sign off and say goodbye to our audience?
I just want everyone to know that it will be okay. And there are resources out there. So never to feel alone, and know that change is an opportunity. So that's something to remember. Change is scary, but it's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Susan. That's a great note to end on. I don't think I can beat that. So with that, good night, everybody. We're going to end the live. Reach out to me.
Thank you.
Okay.